If you've been clenching your jaw, if you've been biting your tongue, if you've been nodding through situations that feel off in your gut, then this is your forecast. Welcome to your somatic weather map for the week of February 9th through 15th. This is not a vibe check. It's a body-based breakdown of what the sky is pressing on and how to meet it in real time in your relationships, in your business, in your health, and the way you make decisions. I'm Taylor, and I translate astrology into language your nervous system already understands. I am going to hop into the weekly transits, and then I am going to walk you through a horoscope, if you will, for each rising sign. If you're unfamiliar with how to find the rising sign or the ascendant in your natal wheel, I have provided instructions as to how to do so in the show notes below, as well as platforms you can utilize to do that. I also want to make sure that I always make mention of the fact that these forecasts are how the collective is generally being impacted. The rising sign gets us a step closer to how this is impacting your life in an individual and unique way. And ultimately, in order to understand this energy through the lens that is your life, it comes down to either you reading your chart because you're familiar with astrology and know how to do so, or, hitting your girl up and letting me do it for you. So let's hop into the weekly transit overview, and then we'll get into the rising sign horoscopes. For this upcoming week, Tuesday, February 10th is where we kick off the transits that we're looking at. Mercury in Pisces squares Lilith in Sagittarius. This is all about the truth not wanting a filter anymore. You may find yourself saying something blunt or hearing something sharp and realizing it's been sitting in your system, it's been building in your body for weeks. The nervous system finally gets louder than the social mask. This isn't about being reactive. It's about choosing not to abandon yourself to keep the peace. In real life, this could look like truth bombs in conversation, voice notes, or session spaces. It could look like resentment surfacing or a sarcastic tone. It could look like backlash in your body when you try to keep everything coy and cute and poised. Don't try to regulate your way through your rage. Let the truth come up and come out, okay? Thursday, February 12th, we have Mercury conjunct the North Node in Pisces and the Sun sextiling Chiron in Aries. This is all about spiritual clarity coming through emotional disruption. You might find yourself losing your train of thought, canceling something last minute, crying out of nowhere. That's not dysfunction. That's integration. So this is where the soul grabs the mic and says, stop managing and start listening. In real life, this may look like unplanned emotional clarity that rewrites your next move. It could look like fatigue or fog or the sudden need for quiet. It may be download level insight that doesn't make logical sense yet. Do not force yourself to make meaning of any of this. Let the inner rewire finish before you turn it into strategy. Saturday, February 14th. This is big, guys. This is big for all of us. And I'm going to be giving you the rising sign horoscope based on where Saturn is hitting your chart with this move. So Saturn enters Aries. It's following Neptune. We had a few weeks of Neptune and Aries without Saturn conjuncting it, essentially. Saturn typically travels with Neptune 5 degrees or so apart from it. So we're going to see Saturn entering Aries. You've had the insight. Now you're going to be asked to build the structure. So this is a big one. Saturn in Aries is all about embodiment, I should say, and not about ideology. It's not what do you want, it's what are you building to protect what you want. Okay, this is a mark of the start of a cycle where sacred no becomes part of your structure. In real life, this could look like rebuilding boundaries around time, money, and energy. It could look like burnout if you're still overgiving or overperforming. It could look like desire to restructure your business, your visibility, your relationships. Do not wait to be inspired. Saturn doesn't care about your mood. It cares about your alignment. Then Sunday, the day after this major transit, February 15th, we have Venus. And I also want to just take a moment. Saturn moving into Aries is happening on Valentine's Day, or what we celebrate as Valentine's here in the United States. I don't know if you guys do Hallmark holidays. I certainly don't. So just be mindful of what comes up in partnership and relationship on this day as well too, okay? So Sunday, February 15th, Venus is in Pisces, squaring Lilith in Sagittarius, and the moon in Aquarius. Desire and performance finally collide. They clash. You have likely been performing intimacy. We all do, to some degree, at certain points in our life. Softening to stay safe, playing along because it's easier than creating a rupture, and this transit ends that, and it ends it really fast. So in real life, this could look like feeling turned off by people who usually feel safe. This could look like exhaustion after nice conversations. This could look like confronting the difference between chemistry and congruence. Do not go back into pleasantries. Let the misalignment be real and let the disconnect be honest. So as I said, we don't have a ton of major transits coming up in this week, but the ones that we do have are doing work and they're asking us to work right alongside them. So let's talk about, based on your rising sign, potentially, if you know where your moon sign is, you can listen for that too, what kind of work you're being asked to do based on the energy of the upcoming week, okay? So the rising signs forecast is all about pointing towards where this lands in your life and like listening to the ask, if you will. Astrology is all about patterns, and a lot of the times we look to key placements in the chart to understand our patterns. If we understand our patterns, then we can pivot. And much of the time, the transit falling in a certain house under a certain sign gives us the key clues, oftentimes the answer to how we need to pivot to improve. And ignoring that pivot is oftentimes problematic. So Aries Rising, Saturn is going to be in your first house, okay? You're not just tired, you're carrying an outdated version of yourself. This week asks you to stop performing being put together and start building who you actually are in your work, in your leadership, in your posture. You know, what you might feel like as an edge in decision fatigue and joint tension, in wanting to delete your entire calendar, is actually asking you to consider, to look at how and where you can show up without a mask in your life and still lead, okay? Taurus Rising. So Taurus sitting in the first house. Saturn is going to sit in your 12th house. That low-level brain fog that you're feeling, the sleep chaos and disruption, the sudden urge to ghost everyone, it's not dysfunction. It's a system overloaded with unprocessed emotions. Taurus is an earth sign, which tends to stagnate, okay? Stagnate emotions, stagnate digestion, stagnate toxicity. This is where we see a lot of Taurians deal with metabolic issues. So when it comes to this week, you're being asked to take the time to clear psychic debris, especially from old jobs, old clients, roles you've never grieved, people you've never grieved, to block off 1 hour, potentially, during that day or days leading up to, and do nothing. Your next level of clarity in this upcoming chapter of life is going to require stillness. Gemini Rising. So obviously Gemini sitting in the first house. Saturn is sitting in your 11th house. You're restructuring your network, not out of drama, but out of necessity. In your business, this might look like setting stronger container rules or finally leaving the group that you've outgrown. In friendships, I'm going to ask you to notice where you overtalk, but you underfeel. It's okay to be honest about what no longer fits, even if it used to. Cancer Rising. So Cancer sitting on that first house. Saturn's going to be sitting in your 10th house of career and public image, the fruits of your labor. So your career is asking for congruence, not charisma. The branding mask is cracking. Your public self is begging to exhale. If you've been leading a team, if you've been launching a service, if you've been renegotiating visibility, I'm going to ask you to pause and ask yourself, is this sustainable or is this just strategic? The answer will live in where your shoulders land. Remember that, okay? Leo Rising, this is me. So if this is you, I see you. Leo sitting in the first house, Saturn is going to find its way into the 9th house of our chart. You don't need another course. You need integration. This week calls for you to move from spiritual theory and into embodied belief. If you're teaching, if you're writing, if you're coaching, if you're reflecting, if you're contemplating, I'm going to ask you to ask yourself, am I parroting what I've heard, or am I transmitting what I know? And you're going to feel the gap in your gut when you speak. I don't know if this ever happens to you and for you, but oftentimes I do much better off the cuff instead of following a script. Per my design as to what can be seen in my chart, I am a conversationalist that has to root anything that she talks about in her own embodied structure of what she's learned. And you can always tell when I'm reading from a script, it feels very not second nature. I stumble a lot. I'm not as quick on my toes. So these are things that you're being asked to look at in the upcoming week and restructure based on where your life is asking for you to take attention and energy away and give more energy and attention to. Virgo Risings, which means Virgo is going to be sitting in your first house. Saturn is going to be found in your eighth house. You don't have to be the container for everybody's plan. You know, Virgo, your organization, your attention to detail, your need for perfection, these are all things that allow you to carry yourself forward successfully, but they're also the thing that cripple you. And they prevent you from having deep, meaningful, heartfelt conversations, relationships, experiences within the professional realm. And I really want you to sit with that. So again, you don't have to be the container for everyone's pain. You don't have to take care of everybody. This week brings pressure in money conversations. It brings power dynamics. It brings pressure in intimacy or relationships built off a false sense of that. In business, you're being asked to raise your rates. In relationships, you're being asked to stop over functioning. If you're feeling back pain or hormonal flares, check what you're observing and absorbing. And make sure that everything that you observe and absorb is yours. Libra Rising. So Libra sitting in the first house, the bicycle for two, justice, harmony, consideration, codependency, people pleasing. Saturn is going to be sitting in your seventh house of relationships. So your relationships become the mirror. And this week, that reflection gets really sharp. If you're navigating a breakup, if you're navigating issues within a business partnership, if you're navigating boundaries with anyone, be it a client, a significant other, a parent, a friend, it is time to stop being fair and start being real. Okay? Feel it in your voice, your tone, and your tendency to smooth over tension. Tension's so uncomfortable for you. Honest relationships are always worth the mess. And that is what you're being asked to sit with this week. Scorpio Rising. So Scorpio is sitting in the first house. Saturn is going to be sitting in your sixth house. Preemptive health, daily routines, best type of food for us to consume. So much richness sits in that sixth house for everyone, regardless of, what your beliefs are regarding astrology. Our sixth house is literally there to guide our day-to-day routines and habits. So with Saturn moving into your sixth house, burnout is a message for you, not a moral failing. Your routines are up for an audit with this particular placement, especially around sleep, food, and overwork. You may feel this through chronic pain or flares of chronic pain, skin disruptions, or that why am I exhausted by noon feeling? So start by saying no to the one thing that is really pretending to be urgent. Important things are not always urgent, and not everything requires our label of urgency to and for it. We have a tendency to over-label urgency in the Western world. Important can exist without urgency. And if it's not urgent, it can still remain important, and it doesn't necessarily require our attention in the immediate moment. Sagittarius Rising, Sag sitting on that first house. Saturn is going to be in your fifth house, okay? Your joy is not supposed to be productive. Joy is so important for you guys, Sages. Okay, this week asks, are you creating it because it lights you up or because it's content? In your business, stop forcing launches. In love, stop flirting just to stay liked. Your nervous system wants to play again, and I'm going to encourage you to let it. Play is literally an antidote to anyone that has prominent Sagittarius in their chart. Play, adventure, and spacious room to roam. Capricorn Rising. So Cap sitting in the first house. Saturn is going to be sitting in your fourth house of home. and family, ancestral relations, at least to a degree. You have been holding it down forever, and Capricorn is the CEO of the zodiac, the boss babe, the I have it all together, the it's all buttoned up. Yeah, you've been holding it down for everyone, and it's unsustainable. Okay. This week brings restructuring in your home, in your family dynamics, or in your inner emotional scaffolding. You're going to feel the edge at night in your breath. You're going to feel it when you suddenly want to move or cancel or hide. Create structure that actually supports your healing, not just your output. You're here to do more than just work. And I understand that ethic has allowed you to find success in your world, but eventually the ethic is going to be your downfall as well too. Aquarius Rising, Aquarius sitting on that first house. Saturn is going to be sitting in your third house of communication and relations. So it's not just a sore throat, Aquarius. It's your unspoken truth backing up into your body. This week presses on how you communicate in business, in family, or online. If you're saying what's expected instead of what's real, your system's going to revolt. Record the podcast, send the voice note, stop rehearsing. Pisces Rising. Pisces sitting in that first house. Saturn is going to be sitting in your second house of resources, giving and receiving, money. Okay. You say you want to feel secure, but your pricing, your food, your schedule don't reflect any of it. This is where somatic self-worth gets real. In your business, are you charging enough to feel safe? In your body, are you eating like you value your energy? Start where it counts, okay? And what allows you to anchor that in. That's going to be your primary focus. You porous little baby. You're being asked to bring things back into the soma so you can actually structure it. That's going to be the most important invitation for you in the upcoming week. Okay. Somatic reframe for you for the week. The tightness in your chest is not anxiety. It's your no trying to speak. So I'm going to encourage you to let it. If this hits, not just your head, but your body, drop your rising sign in the comments. Let me know where your nervous system is calling bullshit this week. You probably already feel it. It's only Monday, but it's coming. Most of us walk around not realizing that we're living, breathing tuning forks that act as antennas for the energy as it's in motion. And if you want this level of clarity sent to your inbox every single Sunday, hit the link below, subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is your weekly map for living astrology from the inside out. I'll see you in the fire.